Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today for the Zoom Q&A, where we're looking at lesson number 3. And one of the biggest parts of today, or this lesson, is the sector compass. So we're going to dive into that and take a peek at any questions you have, look at some examples. Let me just share my screen here. And if anybody has any questions as we go, please don't hesitate to place them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, whatever works best for you. All right. So if we go to lesson number 3, excuse me, it's pollination day here. We've got some huge cherry and apples and wow, and some sun. So lots of pollen moving around today. Yeah, back to lesson 3. So our first little part here, which is not the main event, but it's still important nonetheless. And I'm sure that most of you can see that we're starting into site analysis. And we actually started that in the first lesson when we were documenting our project site climate, right? So now we're taking a deeper dive and we're looking at site and some of the regional challenges. So, this is a little bit of a macro micro, on big picture, what's going on around us, socioeconomic challenges, and what are some of the weak links or biggest problems with the project site. And that's really an important piece to dial into, because I know whenever we get a call from a prospective client, there's a reason for it, right? Their landscape isn't perfect, and well, not that any is, but there's something that's not quite right, and it's important to try and extract that information from your clients or yourself. Some of the obstacles and inevitable costs that are involved with that. So if we look at the rubric, we have a total of 14, and site and regional challenges are 4. So not a huge part of the assignment, but it's again an important one nonetheless. You wouldn't want to be ignoring obvious issues or weak links that were on the project site. We would definitely want to be identifying those, and they can come in any kind of form here, as you can see: climate, water, access, vegetation. They might be regulatory, it may be interpersonal. So that can be quite a deep question and a good one to nail as well as you can. The next thing we're looking at is building sector compass. So this is a fun exercise, and this is getting into, a little deeper site analysis, and it's really focusing on factors that are outside the project site boundary that have an influence. And there's a number of those. The sun is probably the largest one. Prevailing winds. We have social sectors. We have noise and pollution or view corridors, wildlife, noise, water sectors, and that could be a flood or flow. And then with all of those, we really want to think about how we're going to deal with that. So let's say we go back to the sun sector and we're looking at winter sunlight, which where I live is a pretty precious commodity. And we want to make sure that we're definitely accepting this winter light. And we may want to even try and amplify it. right? We're certainly not deflecting it. Now it's quite the opposite when we get into summer and the south side of our house, we definitely want to be deflecting that. Although there's portions of our landscape where we would be accepting it, wherever we're growing any heat-loving plants, we would definitely want to ensure they're getting 100% of the available sunlight. It could also be a greenhouse. There could be many things that applies to. So that's a little bit about sectors. We also want to know the closest population center, fuel station, store, hospital, and public space. And in an ideal world, you'd include that all on one design sheet. So let's take a look at some past examples. This is a student that was in the fall, and she's done a great job here with her base plan in the center of this, and then she's showing these various sectors on the outside. So this is a really good first step when we get into trying to articulate some of the design thoughts for a project site. And let's get into that a little bit here. So one thing that's not shown here is this is north up, and we can tell that by the sun sectors. So they're going to be at the winter sector is here, and the summer one is here. We have the wildlife, we have view, prevailing wind, pollution, and water flow. And that's good to, when you're making note of water flow, it's good to give it a little bit of a description because it could be quite ambiguous. It could be, as it is here, there's a creek. So, that flow is obviously a really important part of the project site, or it could be flow from a neighboring property that's a little bit problematic during the winter months. So again, that gets identified in the deflect, accept, or amplify here. And that's pretty typical to be deflecting and accepting water. That's the little bit of a balance that we play in the Pacific Northwest here, where we get so much water during the winter months, and we want to somewhat deflect those, and then in the summer we'd want everything we can get our hands on. We've got noise, we have privacy, and wildfire. So what you'll probably find, this is a half-acre site, and it looks like it's in a bit of a rural setting. And often that will have a wildlife, or a fire sector. It also may have a wildlife sector that's pretty pronounced. So one thing you'll probably find if we go, I'm not sure if I have an urban example here. If not, we can certainly find one. There's one there. When we do get into an urban space, the wildlife, or sorry, I'm not sure why I keep focusing on wildlife. The fire sector, it actually may not be there, right? Because usually that fire sector is when we have a lot of tree canopy around us. I can't read these contours, but this looks like it's sloping down to the creek here. If we were uphill from a wooded area, that sort of even more increases our risk in terms of a fire sector, because fire does like to go uphill. So yeah, that's something for those that are outside the city limits. You're going to be wanting to think about, and that could be tree canopy. It also could be, you may be budding an conventional agricultural area that grows hay. So as that hay is ripening in the summer, it's obviously increases its risk with fire. So here we have nearby services pointing roughly where those are coming from, and a little title block in the bottom corner. So there's a lot of info on this one page, and that is the ideal if you can get everything on one page. And here's another example. And here we have water going all the way around the property, which is unusual. We have pollution and fire, and this winter and summer sun sectors, as well as wildlife and visitors, and prevailing wind. So that is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to open up an example we do, which is similar but different. And that's probably what you'll find for anybody going on to design for others. You probably will refine what you do somewhat based on what you're learning here. So let me just stop this, and there we go. So here's a sector map we did not too long ago for a client, and this is in an urban setting. So we've got lots of hard surface. We have lots of, we have neighbors here that aren't shown. But the sectors here are a little different. There's no fire. We have a bit of flood. Certainly have privacy, which we would expect. We have quite a big wildlife corridor there, and a small prevailing wind, and then winter and summer winds. Now, this doesn't look, yeah, it's a little more refined perhaps than the other ones that I showed you, but it's basically telling us the same thing. As we are going forward with our design, we want to be keeping our eyes on the ball, so to speak. So we want to factor these in as we move forward. So an example of that might be when we get to lesson 5, and we're looking at water and water flows. You know, if we do have a flood sector here and there's a risk, how can we alleviate that? And actually, we've done the water layer on this project, so we have addressed that. And in this case, we knew our clients were, try and make this a little bigger. Nope, doesn't want to go bigger. Huh, unusual. Our clients purchased a house that used to be used as a dental clinic. So it's kind of one of these residential commercial zonings. And there's a huge amount of hard surface out the front. So we knew they wanted to remove that. And one of the things we did to kind of soften the blow, so to speak, of any potential flooding, as we've proposed, oops, a little rain garden right in here. It's not quite that big. So what we did is we calculated the roof area at the front of the house here, and there's two downspouts, and both of them would run into this rain garden, and then it would overflow out the side here. So how does that help flooding? Well, a rain garden is typically a depressed or almost like a pit of an area. So if there was a flood event coming off of the main road here, this would be one of the lines of defense. It would pick it up and overflow it out the side here. Not only that, is capturing all of this water off the roof and putting it to good use, right? And it's not only that, it's also remediating it, because when we're dealing with asphalt shingle roofing, we have hydrocarbons and fire retardants and things that aren't ideal for, say, annual vegetables, but they are great. Well, I won't say great, but they're workable in a rain garden using woody or ornamental plants, things that we're not going to be eating. Now, yeah, so that's an example how this sector map can influence what we do later on in the project. So again, it's another bit of site analysis. Let us go back to our example here. And let me see, who else do we have? So there's, again, that was the urban one we looked at. We didn't really dive into this, but again, it has a water flows. So there's a little bit of a note about that. As often with urban sites, it's quite flat, but there's a little bit of water coming in from the north, prevailing winds, and the summer and winter sun sectors here. I've got neighbors and guests and crime and noise and pollution and fire. So I don't recall. So if somebody in an urban situation puts in a fire sector, I usually go back to some of these original site images and try and figure out how that might be. There is a little bit of tree canopy here, so maybe they felt that was something that was a risk. I wouldn't personally think that is a huge risk. What is more so is when you have a significant amount of tree canopy and you get momentum building with any sort of fire. Yeah, so this is a good example. And the only thing that's not included here is the nearest town and public centers, and that's a good thing to include. But overall, this is very, very nice. So great example. And let me see, I don't think there's any questions on our Q&A document there. Does anybody have anything they want to ask about in terms of a sector map right now? And certainly.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can we have multiple portions of any sector? So for example, for on our site, we have a little bit of privacy just on the back fence. And then we have another little piece of privacy from some front shrubs on the side. So those two sectors, I guess, are disconnected. So can I have like two privacy sectors?
Oh, absolutely. And just to kind of reiterate. The privacy sector, I mean, if I was putting this together, the privacy sector would be where I felt I was kind of open and where I needed privacy. Um, but however you want to interpret that is completely fine. And you can have little sections of the same sector around your project site. That's totally, that does happen with us. So yeah, no problem there.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because that's a we definitely have privacy in some places where we definitely need privacy in some places where we don't. So if I did want to show on the map where we have, so should I be showing where we have privacy now or where we need privacy or both?
Well, how I interpret the privacy sector is the need for it. So then an area in the landscape where it might be quite open, or you have a little corridor that you'd like to plug up, ideally with any work that you're doing. So I wouldn't that's the sector I'd be looking at. So if you have privacy already, I don't usually see that mapped. Um, it's where you want to try and add it. So as we go through the course and we're doing more design work, this is a document you can reference back to and you can go, aha, yeah, I wanted to have a little bit of privacy in this space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so let me see if there's any other. Probably have another sector map I can show you here. It's usually the first. Here we go. I got one more I can show you. I'll stop that. And this is another. It's another little project that we were involved with. Again, it's an urban site, and you'll notice that I've sort of broken my cardinal rule slightly here, where I usually have north totally up. I did rotate it slightly. And you can see how that can cause a little bit of, so I'm so used to looking at the bottom of a drawing as being dead south. So it gets a little, even with that little bit of rotation, it's a little bit trickier when designing because this is a really hot microclimate in this corner here. In this case, we have wildlife all the way around the property. We have a view corridor. So whenever we have a view sector, that's something to talk about. So in this case, you're looking at the Nanaimo Harbor. So it's a lovely view. You could easily be looking at some industrial operation, right? And that would be a view corridor as well. So you're going to have very different actions with these. With this particular one, we want to leave it open for obvious reasons. If it was our other scenario where we had say an industrial plant that was belching out, either noise or we just didn't want to look at it, then again, that would be a deflect. Um, Certainly wouldn't want to be amplifying or enhancing that. So The view is a little bit, it can be either or, right? It can be good or bad. Um, Privacy, I usually look at privacy, as I said before, something that we want to build. So in this band here, we're wanting to increase the level of privacy. And wildlife and flood. So we had a potential for water coming down above the property, but so not a huge amount of sectors here. And I don't think I put I could have had a wind sector here, but I did not. And on some of the ones we do, we will have a chart. Here I can actually switch to one we just did. All right. Yeah, we just did this one the other day. So this is on an acreage setting. This is about 7 acres, and the base plan, we looked at the base plan for this project in previous videos. But here's our winter summer pathway. We have wildlife all the way around. We have flood potential just at the north and northeast. And then we have fire coming around, basically well, 3/4 of the property because all of this is wooded. And then we have privacy. So again, the privacy here is something we want to soften. It's not a huge issue. Um, the other thing we could have added here, now that I look at it, and we might be. So what we do, before I get to the end of this, what we do is we will document a client's site. So we've gone through, done the space plan, which took us quite a while. And then we put together a sector compass or a sector map, and we will send that off to our client just for feedback. Make sure we're all on the same page. So this is what we see. We're basically asking them if this is what they see as well. And if not, we'll tweak it. And it's a good point in the design to be going, we're very, very inclusive with our clients. Other people have, completely different approach, but ours is very, very inclusive. So we spend way more time during the design interacting with our clients than others might. But when we get to the end, we have way less in terms of edits that we have to do, right? Because everybody's seen how it's been built and provided feedback along the way. So this is an important one to start with. And then we have our sectors and the actions. So, with fire, we want to obviously deflect it. With flood, we're doing both. We're deflecting and we're going to use that water. We have water pooling on the property, and then it drains off into a water element that is not going through the property itself, but it hooks up with a river or large creek. I'm not sure which one it is. So that, we want to try and hold that water as long as possible. And same with wildlife, we want to deflect. And privacy, and then the winds. Winds are often, much like flood, they're sort of a double-edged sword, and we'd want to soften that in the winter and try and invite it in the summer. So, and often these will be coming from different directions, not in this case, but often it is. So that gives you a little kind of glimpse at a couple of our sector maps. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody's got any questions or want to talk about, quite open to talk about anything outside of the assignments here too, as long as we have answered everybody's questions for today. Well, maybe what I'll do.
Sorry, can I ask real quick? On your personal design, there's a lot less information than on what we're doing. Does it make a difference when you put more information in, or is it needed, or is this more for learning purposes that we're putting all the extra information?
I would say there's a lot to be said for the learning end, Tommy. Yeah. Um, let me give you an example of what we would put together for a client. Let me see if there's one here that's. Yeah, and it's quite different than the template. And this is where, you're going to get, sorry, I'm just trying to find completed file here. Uh-huh. All right, I will just add to that. Well, we'll add to it as we go through here. Okay. Yeah, I will share that. So this will be a long-winded answer to your question, Tommy, but yes, there's a lot of information in the template that is for educational purposes, right? There's no doubt of that. Could you take that template file and use it with a client? Sure, you could. You probably find that you don't want to spend that much time on a particular design. So, and dial into the things that you view as more important. So, when I say that, it might mean you would not be documenting your regional challenges, right? Site challenges, absolutely. But they may be more, that may be more something you do. Just got to make sure I got the right document here. There we go. Yeah, I'll take you through a brief tour of, I don't have all the sheets on one PDF here, which is too bad. Maybe I'll try and add those. See how that goes. All right, well, we're adding. So on this particular project, it's a little bit broken up. Yeah, it'll take me a little bit to navigate this. So on this particular project, it was acreage, but most of the property we weren't dealing with. This is sort of an overlay of a drone survey. So we had a drone survey done. They were able to provide us with topographical information that's below the image here. And so what we did after getting this rough layout and some significant plants documented, we did a water layer. So what we had discussed with the clients is we wanted to make best use of their impervious surfaces. So this will be something we look at in lesson number 5. So we're kind of leaping ahead, but this is one of the layers we provide. we look at water. So we're going to do some rainwater harvesting here. We look at access. So let me just try and drag access into this document. There we go. So the access here is pretty small. Like in terms of the overall design, water was pretty extensive. Access, we're really just trying to get some redo a parking area, and the parking area is going to be in this initial run through. We wanted to just basically have a gravel or asphalt parking area here, and then have some sort of infiltration swale pick up the runoff from the parking. That got changed. Now I'm getting this circle of death here. Oh, that's good. It pulled out. That changed. So the client decided they wanted to have this reinforced turf parking area. So it's like a grid you put down, and then you basically seed the top of it. Instead of going the simple route, they want to go the hard route. Then we had a little patio and the main entrance, and just showed a little bit of structure over here. So that was pretty easy. We were trying to encourage them to go with a passive solar greenhouse because they wanted one, they wanted a greenhouse. And then let me try and see if I can bring this other layer in. There we go. So we've done water, we do access, and then we do soil. So the soil is kind of an obvious, it's a soft landscape, everything that's living gets dumped into this. And this is conceptual. So we have just labeled things as such. These are sort of naturalistic, they're there's no specific identification with each plant. Just generally, we can see these are trees and shrubs and herbaceous items. But because the backdrop here is, there's, quite a bit of forest canopy, we want this to look as natural as possible, and for this planting to bring the landscape down, right? So these 100+ foot fir trees, we're going to kind of bring that whole green effect down closer to the ground. And let's see if my computer is going to cooperate. Don't think it likes doing Zoom and this at the same time. So those are the three. This is small acreage, so whether it's acreage or urban, we do 3 layers, right? So we'll do our base plan, our sector analysis, boom. So water, access, soil, and then all of those overlay and create. I'm just going to stop share here, and hopefully that'll help this file a little bit. I'm not sure why there we go. It did. I'll go back to it. Okay, so all of that overlays and creates what we call an initial concept. And that's what this is. And each step of the way, when we finished the water layer, we had a meeting with them, right? So and we had a Zoom meeting. So for us, it was just way easier. We gave them lots of examples here on a water budget. So storing 12,000 gallons, 15,000 gallons, and various roof surfaces. We were taking that from, and their landscape usage over here. All stuff we're going to get into in lesson 5, so I don't want to bog you down with that. But it was our first initial steps in the drawing, and then the access is, of course, all about traffic patterns and the use of the space, and then really the soft landscape is just the icing on the cake. We're not, it does not preclude water. Water comes first, and then we work around our water resources. And then, what did we do here? Oh, I've got a few of the same image. So that was, things did change. Yes, there we went. So here we had 30-inch annual beds because there's a greenhouse here, and then they want to grow foods. So this isn't exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to actually create a native restoration area here, still have a greenhouse at some point. And then here again, we did this permeable paving rather than a little swale to pick up the runoff. And then that was basically the end of our agreement, was the completion of this. So we got to that, and then we said, if you want any details on what plant is going where, we priced that, and we went and did that for them. So we got all of these figured out for a number of different areas here. But this was the main one out front of the house and around this new patio. And then we figured out the hard surfaces and some details on that. And then these were just some dimensions for us because we installed most of this landscape. Unfortunately, my father passed away right towards the end. Or actually, my wife's father passed away, and then my dad passed away 3 weeks later, and then I had a brother-in-law pass away, all in this 1-month period. So it was quite disruptive. So we did not do the permeable parking. That was something we didn't do, but the rest of it we did. So that was all the soft landscape, the irrigation. We had a person we worked with came in and did all the paving for this little patio area. Normally we do all the rainwater harvesting, and the homeowner decided he wanted to do some of it, and he teamed up with somebody else that was helping him with that. So he did manage to get, I think, about 12,000 gallons of storage. And I haven't been back there this year, so I don't know how his collection went and how the system has been functioning for him. They kind of did what we suggested, but they made changes to that, which is natural. I mean, when we went to plant all this, it got changed, and some of that was due to deer pressure. We had to change out a few plants that we had in here that were not durable enough to take the pressure from the deer, and plant availability. So when this was created, those plants were available, and by the time we priced it and were ready to plant, they were not. So we had to make some changes there. But that's basic, Tommy, so long-winded. That's what we provide. So in this case, I don't know how many sheets that is. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. So in this case, there was like 10. There's probably another 1 or 2 that I haven't found right here, but basically up to 10 different sheets as opposed to 150, right? Which is the template file. So a lot of the information in the template file just does not get documented, although it's in the back of our head, and we're not trying to educate. Well, we are trying to educate our clients. It's an inevitable kind of outcome to working with us, but not at the same level as you guys are, going through here. So, and everybody has a different level of interest. We have one client right now on that acreage project I showed you. He took a PDC through Ben Falk. So he knows all about permaculture, but he also knows that he needed help with his property. And so we're helping them out with their homestead. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. And I can certainly show you more examples down the road. That was an acreage example. If we get into farm design, that's completely different. That's 10 layers because we use the agrarian platform. So that Darren Doherty developed that. He's in Australia. And then, of course, if we do a smaller urban project, it's really the same, the water access soil. And probably 90% of the time we're looking at rain gardens in urban settings. And I would say even in acreage. I mean, we installed a rain garden in our property here, and we're on 5 acres. And it'll hold 3,000 gallons of water before it goes to overflow. Like it's a very large rain garden. And part of it was for flood. And the other part I wanted to set it up in such a way that I didn't have to irrigate any of the plants that were planted not only in the middle of it, but up on the sides of it. So we have a bunch of edibles and medicinals that we planted on the edges of it that I'm hoping will not need any supplemental water. So we'll see how that goes. But in its first year, which is this year, I imagine it'll need a little bit of water, but after that, hopefully it doesn't. So that's kind of what I see as almost the ultimate in land design in this part of the world, is being able to plant something, design and plant something that requires very little extra watering. It's tough because our dry season's so long. But yeah, so we're getting near the end of the hour. Is there any other questions anybody has today? No? Okay. Well, thank you all very much for joining me today, and I hope that was helpful for you going forward with your sector compass or sector map work. If you have any trouble at all, don't hesitate to drop me a note. I'm happy to help you out. I don't want anybody to get stuck during the process. And normally we don't see too much of that at the beginning of the course, but probably when we get to lesson 5, people might feel a little bit overwhelmed by it. And certainly at any time, I should just put it in the chat here too. Just bear with me 1 second here. go. So in the chat there, if anybody gets into trouble, and they just can't seem to work beyond that challenge they're having, you can book an appointment for a Zoom meeting with me, and just use that link there. It's kind of hooked into my calendar, so available times are, it's all kind of real time stuff, and it's the easiest way to set that up. But like I say, it's not often used too much during the beginnings, but as soon as we hit lesson 5, there may be some need for that, and don't hesitate to use it if you really feel you want to have a chat about something. So yeah, anyhow, thank you again for joining me today, and have a great week. I look forward to seeing your sector compass or sector map next Monday. And yeah, everybody take care. Have a great week. Yeah, you're welcome.